So it's Well Book Day on Seclo 105.5, and we are talking to local author Matt Adcock. He's written a book called Complete Darkness, a Darkmatters novel. Now, I really love this one. If I'm going to sum it up, Matt, okay, for me, it has a darker side to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In fact, it's very dark in places. In fact, a little bit gory. In fact, it's more of an older teen adult book, and I would never read it to my 4-year-old.
That's good parenting right there, because it's not designed for 4-year-olds. You're absolutely right. I'm hugely honoured that you'd liken me to Douglas Adams, though, because he is an absolute, legend in the field, and it's such a shame we won't get any more hitchhikers from him, because I love those books.
No, and absolutely. And your book, so, I mean, was Douglas Adams one of those inspirations where you write sci-fi from, or were there other people that really kind of struck you and went, oh man, I love the way that they write and I love the way they create, and that's what inspired me to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I've read widely everything from sort of, Herbert and Dune, all the classics, Asimov, Foundation, and but my biggest influence was Ian Banks, or Ian M. Banks, as his sci-fi was known. And I actually got to meet him at a book signing once, because I was such a fanboy, and he asked him how to write a book. And he told me the secret, and it's not actually that tough. Basically, just keep a book with you, a notebook like this, all times, and write any idea you have down. Even it's just like bullet points or very short, because sometimes you have massive inspiration and you don't have time to write it up. Other times you have no inspiration at all, but you'll have time, and that's when you go back to your book and you unpack it. And so you have all your best, seeds of ideas there, and you can just flesh them out in take them all different directions. So that's what I did with Complete Darkness. And as you know, there's copious footnotes, and there's a lot of people have said it's very dense per page, kind of most of ideas per page. And that's the reason, is that all my best ideas were in a book, and I just literally unpacked them into the novel. And that's why it's so eclectic and kind of bounces around all over the place. But it wasn't a very linear kind of process.
Okay, so that's the next question on World Book Day is, do you start at the end and go back, or did you just start in the middle, or do you just have this idea, or how on earth do you write? I don't even know how to start, because I'd love to write a book myself, but I don't know how to start. Where do I go? And I love the idea, by the way, of collecting ideas in a book though all the time, and those quieter moments, going back and reflecting. That I've never heard before, so I love that idea. But what about a book? How do I start?
Okay, well, take your idea that inspires you most, the one thing that's really fires you up, and extrapolate from there. It could be the end, it could be the beginning. And half of the fun of Complete Darkness was I didn't really know when it was going to stop. I had the vague sort of start, the concept, should we say? And then things just happened, and I surprised myself sometimes. Perhaps that's a sign of mental illness, but it's kind of like, it makes it exciting. If you don't know what the next page is going to bring, then when it arrives, you can take it either way. And if it's great, keep it. And if it wasn't, delivering the feels, then you can scrap it and start again. But either way, having that starting point really helps. So that's what I'd recommend. Anyone can do it. My first writing creatively was from a diary. I used to keep a note, kind of a small journal. And then it used to go off into wonder what would happen if this happened. And it started to get slight flights of fantasy. And so that was my first, I probably won't ever publish that though.
Oh, okay. The hidden diary years. That's for later on, right? So we're talking to Matt Adcock. He has written a book called Complete Darkness. I love the book. I really loved it. And I'm also a big fan of the footnote thing, because I thought it added value to the page. And I must admit, I read the book twice to get it. And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes you want to take things face value initially, and then I want to read a bit more and understand, what did that character do again? Or who is that character? And you've got some brilliant Cleric 20, and you've got Gix as well, which is an amazing, funny robot. It is a bit runny. It is a bit gory at times, not runny. What I'm talking about. But we'll talk about the book itself. But I would like to read back some of those amazing Amazon reviews for you, these are some of these are really funny, but some of them are like, I would like your response on them. Absolutely brilliant, says Robert. What a mind. No wonder I used to call this guy Madcock behind his back at school.
That's a school. Yeah, that's probably my journal somewhere. The trauma of being bullied, slightly. And but no, I've forgiven, and it's great.
No, poor quality science fiction. Reading like it felt like insulting my intelligence. Author needs to study such writers as John Wyndham. How do you deal with
Yeah,
that stuff? Because that's on there.
yeah. No, I mean that's the other thing is you put something which is quite personal and quite from your mind out there, and some people might get it, and some people might hate it, and I'm completely cool with that. I'd much rather provoke a reaction like that dear gentleman who's quite old, and not that I stalked him or anything, but he's obviously very kind of not open to new and slightly darker sci-fi. But everyone's entitled to opinion, and if I'd much rather someone hated it than was kind of meh, it's okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say, when you're writing books, like you just said, that is very personal, and so you're opening yourself up for interpretation of what you've written. You've opened yourself up for those kind of things, and that must actually be it's how do you take those things? You know what I mean? How do you take on board those kind of comments? Because I don't know how many times you sent this book to a publisher and then was rejected or whatever. Was that a lot of times? I mean, how do you take that kind of rejection?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a pathway, and I nearly gave up at one point because, like, some people would latch onto different bits of it, so you don't tell the agents or the editors had got their own perceived conceptions of it, and some would say, "Oh, this has got too much spirituality in it." Some would say, "This is too dark, too horrific," and so there was kind of like, but then it was almost like Goldilocks when you actually kind of it's just right, and it fitted so well with Burton Mayers, the publisher, who eventually took it on, and it was such a great feeling to that kind of found that niche, and that's so that was how it started.
So would-be book writers, what would you say?
Keep going, believe in yourself. There's a huge amount of self-published authors out there as well now, and at one time when I first joined the Society of Authors, it sounds very grand, the first meeting, kind of everyone had to go around and introduce themselves, and the chair, this is a while ago now, said, can anyone publish with the big five? And a couple of people put their hands up. And then a couple of people said, oh yeah, smaller independents, that's me, and we put our hands up. And then she kind of did this face like, ooh, any self-published authors, as if it's a secondary kind of thing. And there's some there, but the best thing of the evening was that one of the self-published authors, she wrote kind of steamy erotica, and she had made so much money, she just bought herself a new car with her proceeds, and it was far outstripped anyone else in the room in the amount of money made. And to see the chair's face kind of like digesting that information, that having this prestigious contract meant nothing really in terms of sales and money, was quite fun. So things possible.
So let's talk about Complete Darkness itself as a book.
Sure.
So we've got Cleric 20 is our protagonist. We've got the devil on Earth. The scientists have been kind of entering into this kind of dark matter, which is kind of like the negative afterlife. And the world is discovering this for themselves. What on earth does Cleric get up to? How on earth is he gonna, is he a good guy? Is he fighting the devil? Is it actually just a faith-based book, or is it actually what is it?
Well, I like the idea of having a hero who isn't anything special to start off with. In fact, he's a bit of a loser. He's an older guy, kind of like he hasn't really got his life together. He's won a robot that now he hangs out with, and is kind of his only friend and his bodyguard to some extent. But he stumbles onto this map of dark matter, which turns out to be hell. It's not too much of a spoiler because you learn that pretty quickly, and then he becomes a target. So he's given this isotope, which is a new weapon that the government have created. Basically, the idea is that if you were marked with it now, Simon, everyone in a sort of 5 mile radius would want to kill you, and they'd run up and attack you. They wouldn't know why, and afterwards they wouldn't have any real recollection of the reason for that. But if you'd survived for over a day with that isotope in your body, it would actually super generate your evolution to fight back and give you superpowers, for want of a better word. And that's what happens to Cleric. So the devil, by marking him with his isotope and him luckily surviving for a day, actually might just be the only person capable of stopping the devil when it comes to the climax.
Brilliant. I love this book. I really genuinely love this book, Matt. And when it first landed on my desk to read, I just fell in love with it immediately, and desperately it was sad that I missed out on your official launch at the beginning of that particular book. But look, you're writing more and more as we go on. Where are we up to? What's happening? Is there a sequel in mind?
There is another book. It's called Our Souls, and basically it's not just a sequel, but a slight prequel and a concurrent-esque. So the story tells a little bit before Complete Darkness. Some of it, if you've read Complete Darkness, you'll understand it's going on at the same time as the events, and some of it is after. So it's hugely ambitious. I think my publisher just says that you've bitten off way more than is normal to try and do. But that's what I like. I like a challenge, and I've been writing some short stories in the meantime, and in set in the same universe. That really helps kind of focus your mind, and you can bring other characters into play, which hopefully there'll be. It's nothing so grand as like the Marvel shared universe, but it will be kind of a Dark Matters universe where there's various pieces out there you can kind of jigsaw together.
Brilliant, brilliant. We're talking to Matt Adcock. He is an author, local author to us here. And also he has written a book called Complete Darkness, a Darkness Matters novel. He's also involved in an anthology, which is on a cyberpunk novel called Neo Cyberpunk. If you search that up online, it's very easy to find as well. So in fact, cyberpunkday.com, that's where I found it. So really easy to kind of get that from there as well. Look, Matt, you're a star. Thank you so much for coming on and talking on World Book Day to us.
It's great. It's a pleasure. And I hope that there's many more budding authors out there. And I look forward to reading all your work too.